two, one. Raman, welcome to South Asian Stories podcast. We are so thrilled to have you. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you so much, Samir. I'm very excited to be here. I want to start off by saying I thank you for the work you do elevating South Asian voices. It's incredible, and there are not enough folks like you doing it.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. And, you have a special place in many South Asians' heart because, we were talking about before we started recording is you are in the entertainment industry, and an industry that we honestly don't have wonderful representation. So the fact that you're doing what you do is just incredible. And I know our listener is just so thrilled to hear this, but I want to start way at the beginning, Raman in his childhood form. Tell us about what your childhood was like growing up and how South Asian was your family and what was it like?
Totally. So for one, you may have noticed that my last name is not particularly South Asian. My name is Raman Borsalino. Raman comes from my Bengali grandfather, Ramendra Basu, and that's my mom's side of the family. Borsalino is very different, gruff Bronx, New York Italian family. So I have a very different background than most.
Yes.
And I grew up, so the question was, how was I as a child? Total goofball, to answer your question. Not that I knew I'd end up in the entertainment industry, but I guess that was just inevitable. I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, in the Midwest. So there were not many people who looked like me, for one. My mother, both of my parents rather, were columnists for the local newspaper, the Des Moines Register. And by virtue of that, my family had a fairly public image. So for lack of a better phrase, we were to some degree the token brown folks in Des Moines, Iowa. I think if people were to have any questions brown people related, they would probably give my mom a call.
Yeah, right. And did you feel like when you were growing up that you struggled at all with your identity? Am I South Asian? Am I Italian? Am I American? Did those all come together? Were you having Bengali food with Italian food? And like, how was that experience for you?
Yeah, I ate very well. I will say that. I still do. In some ways, the fact that nobody else really looked like me, I used very much to my advantage. And I think, I mentioned that I was a goofball. I think that being the tendency to want to be a class clown, to want to stand out and to want to be different came from the fact that I felt like there were already all eyes on me for, to some degree.
Right.
You're sitting in a class in Des Moines, and the vast majority of your peers are white. You already feel like there's sort of a spotlight. So I could be the quote unquote model minority, which I already knew was not going to work. There was no way I was good enough at school to pull that one off. So why not go class clown?
Right.
So I did my best at that. The other question, there was very much a spotlight, not always good, on being brown, and oftentimes well-intentioned, but it'd be the type of thing where I'm walking home from school with my friends and I say something about, my Indian background, and a buddy says what he thinks is a compliment. The most earnest compliment he can give is, "Man, Raman, I forget that you aren't white like the rest of us." To which it's like, thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's that's something that's on my mind. There's the time that my mom goes to the eye doctor because she's having like a minor vision problem. She goes to a new eye doctor, and the eye doctor says, well, let me ask you this, ma'am, do you use Curie? And my mom is like, what? I don't know what you're asking. Well, aren't you, as an Indian, don't you cook with Curry, am I saying it right? He's like, well, first of all, no, you're not saying it right. It's curry.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, is it possible that maybe some of the spices have gotten in your eye, and that's what's causing the irritation? And I mean, this is a respectable in the community eye doctor who is suggesting that because a brown woman is having a hard time
interesting.
seeing, it's because she got curry in her eye. Uh, Again, is that dude a racist prick? Probably not. But has he had many exposure, much exposure to brown people? No. And so he sees folks differently, and there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense because these like microaggressions, and especially with the environment we're in now, when there's Asian hate and it's just like um, things like this are coming to the surface that our community has dealt with for so long, especially our parents and our grandparents. That it's and we keep it under wraps because we don't want to cause too much of like a ruckus. But now, like seeing our Asian brothers and sisters and grandparents going through this stuff, like I'm like, wow, okay.
It's
People think it's just happening to you and your family, but like, wait, it's everyone, and we're all speaking up. Um,
it's sickening. And something I want to add to that too is, and we'll get to this more, I think, as we talk about representation in the South Asian community and entertainment. But some of the really just the biggest advocates, the strongest allies that I've had are other Asians in the entertainment industry, and that's not necessarily South Asians, right? You've
yep,
got a lot of East Asians and the folks who are really going through it right now. I think
correct.
a lot of people will tell you this, that after this after 9/11, that's when we were really struggling. And so I think right now I've had folks reach out to me and say, hey, as an Asian, how are you doing? I've been thinking about you. I know about the violence against Asians, et cetera. And I'll be like, I really appreciate that. That's really thoughtful. My role right now is to be an ally, more to the folks who are really at the receiving end of this,
Yes,
because not to minimize the hate against people that look like us too, but we are, I think at this moment at least, we are not the true victims. And so our goal should be to really elevate and help those that are. Do you agree with that?
I agree totally. And it's like, when one of us is hurting, all of us is hurting. And people, as you said, we went through our time where we struggled and had a lot of people reach out to us. And East Asians, while we're all Asian American, like we always have to support each other. And that's why this podcast exists, is to give voices to people who are underrepresented in jobs and careers that may not we don't have mentors for. But before we jump into that, I want to go back into
Yes.
writing. So you grew up in Iowa, and your parents were in the journalism business. Did that inspire your own writing and or ability into the arts, or what was that for you?
So I don't think it did. I think that on some level I was sort of trained to know how to write and to take it seriously, but I never really uh thought about it that way. It's so funny. Even today, someone will read something I wrote and be like, "Oh, of course you come from a family of writers." And I'll be like, "Well, yeah, I guess I do." I'll be like, writing sketches and monologue jokes. I don't sometimes in my mind tend to make the connection to writing these articles
Yeah,
that my parents did, but writing comes in many forms, of course, and I think that did have a big influence on me. That is to say, I did not intend to be a writer. I had no idea that I was going to write professionally, and frankly, Samir, I had no idea that I was gonna explore comedy or entertainment. That was for me a sort of a combination between a pipe dream and just something that I never thought I could or would do seriously.
yeah.
And I'm
And it's
happy to walk you through how
Yes,
that came to
please. That
be.
was my next question, because sometimes these serendipitous moments are the most unique, right? You're in the right place at the right time. Someone notices something small that, so talk us about your unique story of how it happened.
That is exactly what happened to me. Very very serendipitous. So I am from Des Moines, Iowa, where you for some reason have to go every 4 years to become president of the United States. Uh, those are the rules. I didn't write them, but the Iowa caucus system, who knows, maybe rest in peace, could be on its last legs. The Iowa caucus system, for those unfamiliar, we are the first state, we have been historically the first state in the nation to vote in a presidential primary.
Yeah.
So the exposure and momentum you get from winning that first state is unmatched, which means that every presidential candidate from both parties effectively lives in the state of Iowa for a few months up to a year leading up to it. So growing up, I thought it was normal that you get to meet all the presidential candidates, right? Like
Hi,
eventually
hello.
you'd meet someone. Yeah, exactly. Eventually you'd meet someone in another state and it'd be like, oh, so did John Kerry pronounce your name correctly the first time you met him?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and so it's this crazy privilege. So in 2007, it was my senior year in high school, and you've got Obama polling third to Hillary and John Edwards, down 30 points. Uh, but his campaign looked like a lot of fun, and I thought his message looked incredible. So I thought to myself, given that I live at the heart of the political world right now, and you've got this candidate that I really believe in, I want to be a part of this. So I joined Obama's campaign as an intern while I was in high school. Incredible experience, getting to do events, getting to sign up other students. It was the first vote I ever cast, was my caucus vote for Obama. One of the things that came with that, though, was we built this great foundation for his campaign at my high school, such that the campaign called me and said, "Would you like to do a surrogate event?" It means that if you can build a crowd of folks to come, we will send someone cool that young people would like. And I of course was like, yeah, give us give us a celebrity. I'll get you 50 people, 100 people. Who are you thinking? And they said, we have in town Cal Penn, who played Kumar in the Harold and Kumar movies. Now, uh, my dad had taken the entire family to see Harold and Kumar on opening day a few years earlier.
The midnight showing.
Yeah, exactly. No, we were like, you would camp out for a Star Wars movie. We
Yeah,
were camped out in our stoner gear. No, that is very much a joke.
yeah.
Um, but for my dad, knowing that I like to joke around, and then seeing an ad for this movie about um, a South Asian dude who's the film is not based on his identity, is not about the fact that he is
Yes.
South Asian. My
Yeah.
dad is like, we have to see this as a family. And mind you, my dad is the one white member
Yeah.
of the family. But he got it. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa. As soon as I saw the movie, like, whoa, this is really cool. The identity of the Kumar character is really cool. I had seen The Namesake, another film by Cal. So I was very, very excited to meet him. So we did this event at my high school, and believe it or not, I ended up making this friendship with Cal, and we stayed in touch. And throughout the years, he became a close friend and a mentor, and sort of at some point said to me, "I think you're a funny guy. I think you're clearly interested in making people laugh. Why not pursue the entertainment career seriously?" And it's something I never would have thought to do.
So when he told you that, what did that make you feel like? What was going through your head? Like, me? Like, really? You think me? Like,
Oh yeah, it was like, this is one of those. We've all seen the movie Carrie. You get the loser up on stage so you can humiliate them and dump pig's blood on them. I was like, Cal is playing the long con here
yeah,
to
yeah.
uh to get me in the public eye. And no, but I it didn't happen in one moment, to be clear. It was like this ongoing friendship throughout the years. And again, it was not something I would have considered. So I went into a career in politics and entertainment. I didn't take a stab at comedy, or sorry, let me rephrase that. I went to a career in politics and government. That was a Freudian slip, because we all know that government is very much a form of entertainment,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
right, right.
So I went to college, and I got out and I worked on the Obama campaign. and then I worked on another Senate race, and then I worked in the Obama administration for a couple years, because again, I thought this is the most tenable trajectory for me.
Yeah.
It is something that I think I would, for lack of a better phrase, have the least shot of failing at. And don't
Got
get me
it.
wrong, I enjoyed it. It was great, but it was during those years that I got to know Cal better, and he was sort of like, if this is something you're interested in, you should pursue it. And more than that, I didn't know what types of jobs existed in the entertainment career. Not only did he push me towards that type of career, he pushed me towards specifically saying, I see you as a writer. And I think based on what I know about you, writing is what could be, your background. And so I ran with it. And again, very much under his guidance and mentorship. Um, I would be working in DC in the administration, and he would call me and say, "Hey, I'm going to be on Colbert in New York on Tuesday," and so I would take work off and take a mega bus to New York. I don't know why I had to specify that,
I've
but
taken multiple megabuses. That's why I was smiling.
well, that's the thing, Samir. You and I, we need people to know that we got a good deal
That's right.
on
The
the
one
trip,
dollar,
right?
right?
Exactly. I'm like, there are people out here paying $80 for an Amtrak, and I'm pocketing the $79 profit I just
I'm
hit.
with you 100%.
So we got that out there. It was a mega bus. And so Cal would go on Colbert, for example, and bring me along, and I'd chill in the green room and write jokes for him. Some that some that he would use, some that would land and get a big laugh. Occasionally some that wouldn't. And then afterwards he would introduce me to, Colbert, and say, "This is my writer, Ramen." And that is a holy shit moment for me
Wow.
of I
Wow.
want to I want that to be how I see myself and how I'm presented. So that story I told, that was a specific moment, but I remember that as being the moment of, I don't just want this to be a part-time thing. I want this
Yeah.
to be what I do, professionally.
Man, I have so many questions. First question is, do you remember the jokes that hit versus the ones that didn't?
I somehow magically remember the ones that hit and not the ones that didn't. So I can
Got
only
it.
tell you the ones.
Short-term memory.
No, so yeah, exactly. No, so this one was it was the first presidential debate of 2016.
Yeah.
And so Colbert went live. So Cal was like, let's watch the debate together. And then if you can brainstorm any jokes. So one, this is not brilliant material here, but one observation I wrote down in my notes was, I cannot tell if Trump is saying that he's going to do something about a tax, ATTACKS, or a tax, ATAX, because no one can figure out what the hell this dude is saying.
Yeah.
But it does not really matter because he doesn't have a plan for either. And so Cal said some form of that much more articulately than I just did, but it got a big laugh. And then the other one was Colbert asked him, "Do you see yourself potentially?" So basically, what would it take for you to support Donald Trump? And I think he was able to slip in, again, not a brilliant line, that he couldn't see himself supporting someone who is actively trying to deport Harold and Kumar.
Now that's good. That's good. Was it like a surreal moment to see Cal share the jokes that you had come up with? You're like, wow, that came from my brain. Now it's spoken to Colbert, who are like the pillars of comedy. Was that like a pinch me moment?
Here's the thing: there is no doubt about that, and more than that, even I think a lot of writers come to terms with the fact that we, we live in the background to some degree.
Yeah.
Our job is to make the folks that we write for look good, and that's great. I truly love doing that. When we'll talk about this more later, but when I'm writing for someone and you read the online comments saying, "Oh my God, Lily Singh, I love that joke," knowing that that's mine. There's not even a part of me that wants acknowledgement. The opposite. I want to be the person in the background.
Yeah.
But and to be clear, the folks I've worked for have always been great at shouting out their writers. But in this moment with Cal, especially, he was so quick to introduce me as his writer and give me that credit, and that was especially what felt really really good about it.
That's amazing. Yeah, Kal Penn is one of those people that's like the pioneers for South Asians in entertainment. So I feel like he's on the special Mount Rushmore of people that people like South Asians like us look up to. Because when I saw that movie for the first time, I'm like, wow, he's actually a cool Indian guy, right? Like not someone that you see the stereotypes in a movie. You're just like, wow, that person talks and acts like me. But I'm curious to know, what was it like knowing Cal behind the scenes, behind the screen? Because a lot of people listening have seen the movie, but they don't know what's he like as a person. Can you describe that?
Uh, Total asshole. Just the biggest. I mean, just like what a prick. Sorry, Cal, if you were listening. Obviously a joke. Nicest guy, funniest guy. Truly, so actually, let me tell you a little more about. Let me sort of continue on my
Please,
timeline
please.
because it still very much involves him. So I'm working in the Obama administration, and we know that it's going to wrap up. We know that it's about to end, and so we are thinking ahead to future jobs. That said, we were told there is a chance, obviously Hillary's going to win, and maybe we'll even take the Senate and the House, and therefore there could be way more jobs in DC for folks. You could maybe stick around in the new administration. So in the back of my mind, I was like, I'm looking ahead for future jobs, but the likelihood is that I'll just kick around DC for a while, maybe
Yep.
jump between branches. Suddenly, complaining about not having a stable job in DC is truly the least of anyone's worries when we got to the election results in 2016. But I was like, oh, okay, I will not be staying in DC anymore.
Yes.
It is time to get serious here. So I in some ways did the chase the starving artist dream of, was like, all right, well, this is it. This is the time to move to LA. It's something that had been weighing on me for a little while. I had started thinking that I had missed the boat on that it was too late to pursue the entertainment career.
Yeah.
I was feeling sorry for myself about it. I would freaking turn on an episode of Entourage and be like, oh man, I don't want to watch this. This makes me just feel jealous of
Yeah.
of being out there and chasing that. But when my job ended in January 2017 and I knew I was leaving DC, then I was like, let's do this. I moved out. I stayed on a buddy's couch. Again, very much the cliche. I will not say I had like $5 in my pocket to my name or any BS like that.
Yeah.
I had a very small amount of savings. More than that, I had a family who was incredibly supportive, and my mom saying to me, I want you to take this risk because it's what you care about. And if you fall flat on your face, I think she said if and not when. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was if you fall flat on your face, then I will support you. And for one, I was incredibly touched. For another, I think it's important to tell that part of the story because I came from a place of privilege that I was able to have that safety blanket. We're not a wealthy family. I'd say Midwest, upper middle class, or something along those lines. But
yeah, no, what I want to highlight too is the fact that your mom did that for you. I've talked to so many people on this podcast where they didn't have the parental support, right? And they just, they want us to take conservative jobs because they don't want you to fall flat on your face. And because all these other jobs where we don't have people that look like us in them, don't have mentors, they just feel like, oh, the chance of failure is higher. So that I just want to highlight and underscore, like having that is amazing.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that is something I hear all the time too. And I think you've in many ways hit the nail on the head in terms of why there aren't people that look like us in this industry. I think for a lot of, white folks, you can turn on any movie and TV, and then you can imagine yourself being an actor or being an entertainer because that's what everyone out there looks like. And so
Yeah.
it is so easy to envision yourself, or for a parent to envision that being their child, with uh, with folks, who are a little less traditional when it comes to a background in entertainment.
Yeah.
It takes some serious imagination to imagine that, and not something that everyone has. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But again, I want to highlight the fact that I was fortunate enough to come from a place of privilege, that I was able to take a risk that I know that many folks aren't.
Sure.
Um, but I came out here, I worked a few different jobs. The first job I had was at Creative Artists Agency, the biggest talent agency out here. And it's really funny because they got my resume and they were like, we just signed the Bidens for their post speaking, their post administration speaking engagements. And we are looking for someone with political experience that would want to, work with their team. And I was like, I'm a big fan of the Bidens, but I came out here to get away from the political world. And that was me being a moron, because you fight and claw for any in the entertainment industry, just any reason to get in that building, you take
Yeah.
it.
Right.
So after thinking about it, and talking to the folks, being like, hey, we also represent a bunch of comedians, Trevor Noah, Colin Jost, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. This is something that could put you on that trajectory.
Yeah.
So I did that for a couple years, for a year and a half. Actually, I feel like Joe Biden did his last paid speaking engagement and then left to run for president. And then I left CA like a couple weeks later. So I saw that one through. It's all right. No need to give me credit for his winning president. That's totally fine. There were a
We
lot
will
of
definitely put you in the footnotes.
please. And then around that time, Cal reached out to me and said, I need an assistant because my NBC show Sunnyside just got picked up. And he said, I'll be honest, I have reservations about hiring a friend as an assistant. To which I said, put me in, coach. Let's do this. And that was that. And I then worked for him. We were buddies, but I still got him coffee and did the assistant stuff. Gave him my advice, often solicited, sometimes not. Which I think being friends with the person you're working for has that bonus that to some degree you can get sort of an advisor in addition to an assistant.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is you're in the room, right? Where the decisions and where the content, where everything is happening. I think the biggest thing that I see is exposure and being in the place where things are actually happening versus somewhere else where you're looking at you're watching the Entourage episode on the side. No, you're actually in the episode, right?
Totally. And thank you for bringing that up. This show that Cal did, Sunnyside, it was co-created by Matt Murray, former Saturday Night Live writer, Good Place writer, and it was executive produced by Mike Schur, who created truly some of the biggest sitcoms out there, including The Good Place, Parks and Rec, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So to be a fly on the wall in that writer's room and watch how it's done was just like, in terms of Jedi training into the entertainment world, you could not ask for a better opportunity. What happened next was I was Cal's assistant, and it'd been maybe a year and a half. Cal was in London for a week for work, so I had little to do for him. This was a little over a year ago. 2020 election was gearing up, and I just had it in my mind. I thought to myself, I need to write more in my free time. Why don't I use this opportunity to write some sample material since it's a light week? And I thought one of these sample things I could do is a pitch for a potential show I'm going to present to Cal. I'm going to present to him when he gets back an idea for a show that he could host about young people getting engaged in the 2020 election. And I thought, obviously, this isn't going to go anywhere. I have no experience coming up with a show idea, but my hope is that he will see this. Hopefully he'll like it. and I'll have the experience writing it. And he will know that I take it seriously, that I'm trying to take my career to the next level and, come up with ideas and come up with show premises. So I took it to him. I probably didn't express the timely nature of it quite enough because like a month had gone by and I was like, hey, dude, have you read that thing that I sent you yet? He's like, oh, I'm totally going to. Like, it's sort of about the election, which is coming up really soon. So if you wouldn't mind doing, and he reads it and he's like, oh my God, this is great. Let's do this. Let's try and make this show and let's pitch this show. And one thing led to another. And like a month later, we had sold a show, and I was the executive producer of a Freeform show. Freeform is sort of Disney's youth arm. They air Grownish and a couple other just really phenomenal shows that give great representation to underheard voices in a lot of ways. And we did this election series, and suddenly I had gone from being an assistant to a co-creator of a show literally within a week.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Like, I can just imagine you, Raman, like in your room, right, writing this thing. You're like, this is my sample. Like, hope Cal reads this to a freaking show, right? That's amazing.
It's really funny. I had one of my closest friends, Miles, my buddies Miles and Kevin, had been telling me for a while, for well over a year. We have a writers group that meets on Sunday. If you ever have any sample material, we workshop each other's material. It's a great, supportive group. Come. And I just never had anything to share. And so I took this and, I presented them my ideas and they were like, I could see this having some actual traction. And now it's like, dude, you show up to our writers group one time and then you sell that idea. Create a show.
Like, I have golden hands, right? That's who I do.
To be clear, I shot the moon. This is never going to happen again. This is not this is not everything I touch turns to gold. This is a beginner's luck situation.
So talk to us like what that was like being an executive producer for a show. Like, what does that entail? What was that like?
Well, the first thing that we do is like we're pitching the idea of the show, to different folks. And so the first call we have is Samantha Bee, who's like interested in it. So it's me and Cal and Samantha Bee and someone, Kristen, on her team. And like, I'm not sure if I would be qualified to interview for a job on Samantha Bee's show. So let alone tell her why she should buy a show that I myself created. So it is to some degree a fake it till you make it mentality. Right. Then when the show actually got made, I was partnered with our showrunner, this guy Stu Miller, who was the field director for The Daily Show for a while, and he had just gotten off. We didn't even know this movie was being made because it was secret. He had just gotten off heading the field department for Borat 2. So this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he became a close friend and an ally. And we're on the phone like 24/7 talking about ideas for this show. And again, it's like, in this moment, I am this dude's equal, like coming up with ideas, even though he's been doing this for so long, knows so much more than me. But it's a learning experience. And the show was an absolute blast. We ended up booking incredible guests. Labor leader Dolores Huerta was our first guest. She marched alongside Cesar Chavez. Our second guest was Hillary Clinton. We had cameos from Kumail Nanjiani and from Joey King and Mark Cuban, and just what an incredible experience. Wow. And also getting to hopefully make a difference in an election year.
Yeah, that's incredible. And again, we talk about pinch me moments like that. You probably when like Hillary Clinton is sitting across from Cal and you're like, gosh, like I was the engineer of this, right? This is the genesis was in my head. Like, man, that's so cool. I'm so happy for you. Like,
thank you, dude. That's amazing. I appreciate it. It was very much a pinch. Here's what I'll say. It was very much a pinch me moment. It was like the highest high I'll ever feel No, not because Cal was giving me some of his good stuff. Uh, he uh, he does not, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Okay. But the highest high I will ever feel. But at the back of my mind, I knew that I had shot the moon, right? Like I was like, this show is gonna end, and I will go back to being an assistant at best or unemployed.
Right,
uh,
right.
hopefully under a new administration. I don't think I'll go back to politics and government, but I could always do that if I fail, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I had that in the back of my mind. Again, I got very lucky in that maybe the week after the show wrapped. Actually, the show hadn't wrapped. We were still working on it. We had maybe 1 week to go. My team at United Talent Agency, who I had just started working with the week before to, sort of help me find the next gig, was like, "Oh, Lily Singh is hiring for her season 2." And so for me, it's like, all right, at this time in my life, there the one South Asian late night host, someone who I really look up to,
Yes.
really respect, is
Yes.
looking for writers. Could this timing be any better? And again, I got incredibly fortunate. And after several rounds of submissions and interviews, landed a job with her show that started, the month after our show ended.
That is amazing. That is serendipitous moments, my man.
Totally,
Um,
the timing worked out incredibly well on that.
Talk to us what it's like working with Lily, and your experience as a writer for her.
Oh my God! For one, Lily is, and she's probably not going to listen to this, so don't think I'm pandering. She's the hardest worker I've ever seen. I mean, so she will. I mean, every single script that goes before her, for one, she'll have approved it, but for two, for another, she will have done edits and punch ups and added jokes herself. Uh, but working on her show has been such a fun, just, they said to me in the interview, actually, they're like, you used to work in DC, you come from a political background. This is not necessarily going to be a political show. Are you sure that you want to do something that is maybe a little bit outside of your background and outside of your taste? It turns out, to their credit, I think they were underselling that a little. Lily is, politics doesn't have to mean, horse race running for office elections. It can be about the attacks on farmers that are happening right now in India, or
Right.
the attacks on trans people that are happening right now in this country, both of which, among many other things, we've been fortunate enough to cover, and I've been fortunate enough to get to write about. But during that initial interview, being told, "Are you sure you want to do something that's not as political as you might like?" It was a very easy yes. It was like, you know what? There will always be politics. There will always be government. This just seems fun.
Yeah.
The fact that it is a 1:30 a.m. time slot, the not give ourselves the fair amount of respect, but it's like that affords you a chance to really experiment with fun ideas
Right.
and
Right.
goofy stuff. And writing just the silliest stuff. One of the first things I wrote was, it's like an inside the actor's studio type thing, and it is an interview with Lily Singh is playing a British actress named Rima Grant, and Rima Grant's claim to fame is that she is the actress who plays Lily Singh on A Little Late with Lily Singh. And so the premise here is that Lily is not a real person. She is a character played by an actress. And it's just like, would Fallon ever entertain that at his 11:30 time slot? Who knows?
Right.
But
Right.
that is some 1:30 a.m. stuff right there.
Yeah. Right. Right. What were some, can you share some of the highlights of like memories that you've done, and maybe even share some of the lowlights, because I want people to know that you've had a very illustrious career, right? You shot the moon, but I want to also talk about some of the harder moments. Can you share a bit of both?
Of course. And so you mean in the past, like throughout this particular
Correct.
moment.
Yeah.
So I will say that Hollywood, I mean, I'm not one to talk because I'm still, I still consider myself I'm still a good age. I'm 31. I'm still young, but Hollywood is like a very young town. So sitting the fact that I came to Hollywood in my late 20s with no experience, at least in that industry, I was competing against people who were 21, 22 years old and were just out of college.
Mm,
So I'd be an assistant aside someone 7 years younger than me, or watching agents a few years younger than me down the hallway was a humbling experience, and it was not a bad experience. It was still an incredible one, but it was like, am I up against the clock here? How quickly do I have to make this work, because I don't have the luxury of dicking around for 10 years and hoping that something sticks.
yeah, yeah,
So, that was, I think, again, I don't want to call it um a low point, but it really put my back up against the wall.
mm,
But all of it was fun. All of it was a good experience. I'm very fortunate that I can't think of any sob stories, at
that's
least
good.
anything that would make someone feel sorry for me
No,
in
no,
this
that's great
industry.
because I think having perspective, just to know eyes wide open, because the goal of this is if someone listens and say, "Hey, I want to be a writer," know eyes wide open, what it's going to be like, the goods, the bads, the uglies. But glad there's not too many uglies in your story, which is amazing.
Well, I mean, I will say this too. When I was younger, working between political campaigns oftentimes meant meant months without a job. So I think before
Mm,
earlier on in my 20s, before I made it to Hollywood, that's where some of the low moments were.
got it.
So I think a lot of people, I experienced those same anxieties and fear of being unemployed for the rest of my life and all that stuff. I just experienced it in a different industry,
Got it.
such such that when I got out here, I was a little more battle tested, if that
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Hardened.
Yes, exactly. You can't break me. DC has already done that for you.
That's right. That's right. Man, that's amazing. Okay, I would love to transition in our last few minutes to our rapid fire questions. And for everyone listening, these are questions we've asked all our guests. And I'm so excited, Raman, to hear your thoughts on these.
Oh God.
Okay, first question is is there a item or service that you've bought recently that has dramatically improved your life? It can be big or small, but something that you've bought recently that you're like, man, this is something that I love.
I really freaking wish someone had told me 13 months ago when we started using Zoom that I should get AirPods. That would have been really, really nice, especially when you've got the hair that I do, that you can just hide them
Yeah,
underneath.
yeah,
So I got these like a month ago, and I'm truly like, what have you been doing until
yeah.
until now,
They're
man?
game
It's kind of
changing.
a boring answer, but you want to talk about a utility item.
Yeah,
If anyone else out there wants iPods, tell them Ramen sent you. You get
yeah,
a
there you go.
5% discount.
Right. If you already are not into like half your things Apple products, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So I want to ask you this, and maybe you have a different answer. Is when you think of a South Asian person you look up to in the entertainment field, who would you say comes to mind and why? And I think we've talked about a few.
Yeah. So I guess let me think of some others. One person you had, the Surgeon General Vivek Murthy on
Yeah.
your show. I thought, just what an incredible interview. What an incredible person.
Right.
He's someone I very much look up to. Um, I think Kumail Nanjiani, just what a badass. I think he's so funny. Hassan, I think Aziz was really one of the first stand-ups
Yep.
that I was like, I am obsessed with this guy. Stand-up wise,
Yeah. Right.
I would love to be like this guy.
That's awesome. Yeah. Those kind of guys and gals, it's just like, every time you see someone like that who breaks a barrier, like who does something that we as a community haven't done, you're just like, Wow, like it's just so comforting, right? Like, even Dr. Vivek Murthy, right, who is a doctor, a lot of us are doctors, so to become the Surgeon General,
Yeah,
like the top doctor, and like when I was doing the interview, just the humility he has in the role, right? Even he has
totally.
dark moments, right? The guy who has 7 degrees, right, has dark moments. You're like, you feel better about what you're going through in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Although, yeah, I mean, having a brown guy as the Surgeon General certainly has its downsides. Can you imagine every brown person whose parents made them go to med school, and they're
Right.
like, "All right, I finally did it," and now they're like, "Oh, but you're not the Surgeon General. What's that
Right.
about? How
r-
come?"
Right. You got a 99 out of 100. Where's the last point?
Yeah, yeah, we've all heard that one.
Man, that's great. Okay, this is a great one. I'd love to hear your answer. Is what is a movie or book that has had the most impact on you?
God, I gotta go Harold and Kumar. It's just, how can you not? It is
Yeah,
about a dude who looks like me, uh, just smoking weed, having being a genius, being a badass,
yeah.
having a good time. Um, and again, I just uh, the fact that my dad took me to see that in theaters when I was 14 years old, uh, hella awkward moment with the sex scene, like truly. I don't know if you were with your family, Samir, when you saw Harold and Kumar for the
I
first
was not.
time.
I made that a point.
Yeah, good call.
Okay, great. Yeah. And have you? I'm curious to know. Have you revisited that movie later on in your life, and have you noticed things that you're like, oh, when I first watched it, this was something that I may have missed, or something about with your experience you've seen?
Good question. I know there's a moment when Kumar says thank you, come again in the Apu voice,
Yeah.
and getting to know Cal, I know that one of the things that has always really, really bothered him was Apu from The Simpsons, and the fact
Hmm.
that Hank Azaria, a white guy, plays Apu. So knowing that and revisiting that scene, knowing that it's a real fu to the white people who talk in that voice, I think is really cool.
That's cool. That's a good thing. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Well,
and I don't know. Have you seen The Problem with Apu, the Hari Kondabolu
I have not
documentary?
seen it, but it's definitely on my list.
It's great, and it got results. Like it, one could you read the comments on. We'll never read the comments, but if you do read the comments, talking about it on Twitter, it's just all these angry white dudes. And to be clear, I'm a Simpsons fan. I grew up on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
I love The Simpsons. That is obviously something to reckon with, the
Right.
Apu thing. But the video, the film, the documentary, which with Cal was interviewed for, got results, and now they are recasting Apu to be an actual brown person. So, and that is so cool.
That is so cool because it's like small steps like that, right? Things that you thought were like, set in stone. This is the symptoms. Like you can't touch that. We as people can make change if you just, raise the voices and bring concerns up. And like, I think you hit the nail on the head where it's like,
There are still so many barriers to be broken.
right, right. But even one small step gives a crack,
Yep.
right? Okay, this is one way place we can influence. Okay. These questions are some of my favorite. And I'm so excited to hear your thoughts behind this. Is
Uh-oh.
um so imagine someone who's South Asian, like who wants to become a writer, who wants to become part of the entertainment industry. What advice would you give them and why?
Awesome. Great question. And I'm excited to answer it. There are so many supportive groups out there who I think groups and people like CAPE, the Coalition of Asians and Pacific Islanders, I believe, CAPE, in entertainment. And these are folks that really elevate voices and help people. And I just imagine that if you are a young person who is interested in pursuing this and you don't have the support system, there are just so many of these people looking to give back that you could frankly, you know, I'd say I'm one of these people. I've responded to blind messages on Instagram and Twitter of, hey, really would love to pick your brains about how to do this and how to get involved. And I think there is absolutely no harm in sending those messages, sending those emails, do the research, people you look up to, reach out to them. It may not be you may not have as good luck sending a message to someone like Cal or Lily who get a million of these a day, as you may a Ramen Borsellino who's desperate to feel validated. But truly, I think we've been talking about this. A lot of folks like us do not have parents who understand the industry, and so you may not know anyone who's ever done this. Reach out to folks blindly, and I
Yeah.
think you will be very pleasantly surprised in the feedback you get, even if that requires not giving up and reaching out to a number of
Yeah.
folks after if you haven't been
Other than CAPE, were there any other organizations or helpful things that you can share with the listeners that would be useful for people that are wanting to do more research, or any books or interviews that might be helpful?
Yeah, let me think about that for a moment. I guess if you join the Obama campaign in 2007,
Yeah.
then you will strike gold.
Get a time machine and go back 2007 with little Ramen, and you guys can maybe hit
Yeah,
it big. Okay.
exactly.
Yeah, no.
But no, I mean, just watch and learn, right? Immerse yourself in this. I
Yeah.
think Hollywood is one of the few industries where you can like watch Game of Thrones or Parks and Rec and be like, what? I'm doing research for work.
Yeah, right, right. This is part of my homework right here.
Yeah, truly.
Awesome. Well, this has been an amazing, amazing interview, man. You can see I've been smiling like 95% of the time. Um, Before we close, anything you'd like to leave the audience with? Anything you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I mean, look, I'm still very much hopefully at the beginning of my entertainment career. And I've had some minor successes, and I'm sure there will be periods of unemployment, et cetera, and those down moments we talked about earlier. But all of the minor successes I've experienced so far have just been the direct result of a supportive community,
Mm,
a very supportive South Asian community, people who may not know this world, but just saw that it was something that I was interested in and wanted to be supportive. Folks who may not be of the same background, but in the industry, but know that it's time for a change and time to make this industry less white male. Loved ones, mentors. It's just, I think any success should be chalked up to those around you helping and supporting you and uplifting you. And so to me, it is very, very important that I give back. And when I feel like I know enough that I'm in a position
yeah.
to mentor the next crop, I want to be doing that. But I also right now want to really just be thanking everyone, all of my mentors and the folks who have who have helped break into an industry that may not be that easy to get into. But Samir, this has been so much fun. I mean,
Yeah.
what a blast. I've loved this conversation.
Man,
Thank you for
so
having
good.
me on.
One of our best. When if people want to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch?
Try sliding into the DMs
Yes, yes.
at Ramen Borsellino on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks again. We cannot wait to see your amazing work on Lily Singh and beyond. Thank you again for what all you do for our community and lifting the voices and just trailblazing more than
That is
anything.
praise I do not deserve, but I will take it absolutely.
The
But
validation you were looking for.
exactly before we started recording, we scripted this out. But
Yeah,
no,
right.
thank you for elevating voices. Truly, so important.